So tonight, Chris is going to briefly delve into his history with Pink Floyd.
Briefly? Oh, crap. Hello and welcome once again to the Darkened Room of Music Conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Darren.
And just like Darren said a few seconds ago, I'm going to take a look at Pink Floyd and my experience with it. Now,
awesome.
This is one thing that we're going to do on our channel, is that we're going to highlight artists for one episode. And since Pink Floyd is my second favorite, we decided we're going to start here.
Yeah.
I know that a million things have been done about Pink Floyd. The documentaries, the videos, I mean...
a lot of information.
All the books that have been published. Yeah, there's a lot. So it's like, what can I say about Pink Floyd that people haven't already heard?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm going to just kind of detail a little bit my discovery of Pink Floyd.
Nice.
Yeah, and how and my journey along.
Now, looking forward to this.
Yeah. Now here at the beginning, I'm going to bring up some historical facts about how all the members of Pink Floyd met, because that's something you don't hear a lot about.
This is true.
So I'm just going to touch on that a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to start off with a little pop quiz. Do you know Syd Barrett's real name?
I have no clue.
It is actually Roger Keith Barrett.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And ironically, a man named Roger would come along and contribute to the band as well. But I don't know where the nickname Syd came from. In fact, in all of my materials that I've researched on, there's no definitive answer. There's there's like three different theories. Like there was a drummer named Syd at some blues club that he really liked, and Syd wound up like replacing him on drums. So that's one theory, but no one can definitively say that's where the nickname came from.
Wow.
So it may have just been one of those things where it was always with him through childhood, and you know he doesn't really know why he's called Syd. So a childhood friend of Syd Barrett, his name was Clive Wellham. He played drums in Syd's like first band when he was very early teens, maybe not even a teenager yet. But he introduced Syd Barrett to David Gilmour.
Really?
He was Clive and David were both friends at the time.
So this predated him meeting Roger?
No, actually, it doesn't predate Roger. A childhood friend was Roger Waters.
Of Syd?
Of Syd, yeah.
Okay.
Now, Roger's mother, she was a teacher. A lot of you probably heard that his dad died in World War II. He was 5 months old. So he was raised mainly by his mother. But she was a teacher, and she also taught Syd Barrett. He and Syd were both in the same school, so they knew of each other. They were the kind of childhood friends, but they didn't really become close friends until high school, when both Syd and Roger were participating in marches and protests and stuff.
Oh, okay.
As you know, Roger's like very...
Somehow I could see that.
He's very politically outspoken, so that's how they met.
Gotcha.
I believe that Roger created a poster and Syd really liked it, and that's how they connected.
Okay. See, I'm learning things I didn't know.
There you go. So that's all through high school. Now, Roger decided he was going to go and study to be an architect. Like, he had a love for music. He loved playing music, but of course, you know, got to think practically. So let's go get an architect degree. That's where he met Nick Mason and Richard Wright. So all of them,
university. So
they were all studying to be architects.
Yeah.
So Nick Mason has a funny story about when he first met Roger. In his biography, he describes this like ethereal, like stars are aligning thing when Roger came to him and said something mystical about how he and Nick were like connected with music, and I forget exactly the quote. Yeah. It's a really long like paragraph. But then he was like, "No, that's not how it happened. Roger just wanted to borrow my car." That's how they met for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. So they got to talking about music,
and knowing Roger, he didn't give it back real easy.
Probably not.
Once he gets control, look out.
Possession is how much of the law or something?
9/10 of the law.
9/10 of the law. Yeah. So they all started talking about music together, and they actually all dropped out of college to focus on a music career. And they formed a band together, and they called it Leonard's Lodgers. And that was named after the place that they were living. There was a building with like a living space and a rehearsal space, and the guy that owned that building was Mike Leonard. Okay. So they named the band after the landlord of this place. Yeah. Now, Bob Close and Chris Dennis are two band members that came along a little later. They joined the band, and then they renamed the band to T-Set. So that lasted for just a little while. Bob and Chris left, and Syd Barrett was actually kind of hanging around at the time, and they were kind of wanting him to be part of the band, but he was like kind of shy. He's like, I don't see how I'll fit in. But once Bob and Chris left, Syd finally came into the fold, and that's when they become the Pink Floyd sound. That was their first incarnation of their name.
Okay.
Of course, named after Pink Anderson and Floyd Council, which were
two blues guys.
Southern American blues guys.
Yeah.
So that's where the name came from, and at that point, you kind of know the rest.
Yeah.
You know about Syd Barrett, kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
Roger
being a dictator within the band.
Yeah, and ultimately firing Richard Wright from the band during the Wall recording. There was the legal fight with him and David Gilmour.
Yeah.
All of that. You know all
that's
of
out
that.
there, yeah.
So at this point, this is where I just want to go into my own personal experience.
Great.
How I discovered Pink Floyd, where I was in my life. I was actually 17 years old. Now, I didn't ultimately discover them at that age. I had heard Another Brick in the Wall.
Sure.
It was a pop hit. I had heard Money.
Yeah.
In fact, I had bought the 45 for Learning to Fly when it was new in 1987.
Before you were
before I was a huge fan, yeah. So, I loved the video. I loved the imagery of it. I loved the sonic qualities of the whole song itself.
Yeah.
Like, this is really cool. And, of course, my friend in high school at the time, Todd Perkis, shout out.
Todd, what's up?
Yeah. He knew I liked that song a lot. He handed me a cassette of The Wall. I brought this up in a previous episode.
Hey, can I interject something?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I just right away, and I was pretty big into music when that song came out.
Yeah.
And so we're talking like 1987. And I didn't know a whole lot about, information was kind of limited then as far as what you could learn about bands and who the current members were and stuff. I could tell right away that something was a little bit different than the Pink Floyd I'd heard before.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was, just chalking it up to the 80s production, and I think that's a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But, without even realizing that this Roger Waters guy was no
gone.
Longer involved.
Yeah.
I could tell that it was different to me. It sounded different to me. But
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to
absolutely.
interrupt.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I listened to The Wall with my headphones on, in my bedroom, in my bed alone, lights out, eyes closed, listened to it beginning to end.
It's the way to listen to it.
And was blown away.
Wow.
And this is about the same time that I had bought my first CD player. So this was like late 87. I bought the CD player like early 88.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I made a copy of his cassette. I dubbed it to another cassette. Listened to that over and over and over in my car.
Wow.
And I'm going to detail kind of like what really hooked me on The Wall here in a moment when I get to when I purchased the CD.
Okay. Now think about that. So you're talking 1987. So it was like 8 years old at that point.
Yeah.
So that would be like getting into an album now from 2013.
Yeah.
Or 2012.
Yeah.
That's just weird. It's weird to think of it.
It is, isn't it though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. The first CD I bought by them, it was the one that I was familiar with. I already had a copy of The Wall, so I was able to listen to that. Got my CD player. The first CD I bought was actually A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I was very familiar with that one. It was the current one. I knew Learning to Fly.
And it's a great album.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
I got it pretty early on back then, too.
All right, so most people have probably heard Learning to Fly.
Yeah.
On the Turning Away was a big rock radio hit.
I thought that was a great song. Now, that song did kind of have more of the classic Pink Floyd sound, I thought.
It did, yeah. And that was actually done on purpose. David Gilmour got the band a little bit back together once they were done with their legal fight with Roger. And they wanted to kind of pay homage to the Pink Floyd fan and not alter too much. There were tracks on there that were quite different, like One Slip.
I love that song.
Oh, it's a great song.
That's possibly my favorite one on it.
But my favorite moments on the album was Terminal Frost. I think that's one of the greatest instrumentals ever recorded.
I agree with you 1,000,000%.
Fantastic. Sorrow is great. Also kind of a classic structured Pink Floyd type of song.
Very much.
And Yet Another Movie, which pays homage to old movies. So if you haven't heard those, check those out. They will be included in the Spotify playlist.
Yeah, great stuff. And it holds up well.
Yeah.
It really does.
It does indeed. So the next CD, I went out and sought out. I actually waited a little bit because I'm a teenager. I got to save up for it. And it's a double album, so it costs twice as much. I got The Wall on CD finally.
Yeah.
And everyone's heard Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Comfortably Numb, Run Like Hell, Young Lust, Hey You. And then you probably heard Mother. Mother was played on classic rock radio quite a bit.
Yes.
But some highlights for this song, for this album, Is There Anybody Out There?
Love it.
Now that is the classical guitar and violin piece. That's mostly instrumental, except for the very beginning. Check that out. That's an amazing track.
Yeah.
And what hooked me on the cassette when I was listening to it, calling back to that now, is I heard the storyline. I heard it was a concept album, and it built up to the moment near the end where it gets to the songs "Waiting for the Worms," "Stop," and "The Trial," and I had never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
At that point in my life, I hadn't. It was so theatrical.
Right.
It was so dramatic.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I think it impacted me much the same way. I think my reaction was very similar to that, actually.
Yeah.
And that album's put together so well. The orchestration is just so beautiful.
Yes.
And it's one of those, they've done concept albums before, but that one, for whatever reason, even though it's a double album, it's pretty easy to, at least for me, it was easy to digest.
Oh, yeah. It really is. Because it's broken up into almost like acts. Like
Exactly right. Yeah. It's very, the fact that they came out a few years later and made an accompanying movie, I don't know if that was, maybe you could tell me if that was the plan from the get-go.
The plan for the movie from the get-go, I may as well touch on this now. Yeah. Is that it was going to be concert footage intertwined with the live action stuff recorded with, or filmed with Bob Geldof.
Okay. None of the cartoon stuff, or
some of the cartoon stuff would be in there, but it was going to be more centralized on the live performance. But they shot the live performance, and the technology at the time, the film was too dark. Now they eventually re-released that because now we have the technology to clean it up, brighten it up.
Right.
That didn't exist, so they scrapped using the concert footage and just went with a whole movie concept.
Gotcha. And did you like that movie?
Oh, God, yeah.
Me too.
I really did, yeah.
I thought it was brilliant, honestly.
Yeah. In fact,
it impacts you, man. When you watch that, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's oddly beautiful in a way. As dark and depressing as it is, there's something about it's like, is it me? Am I sick? But like, I enjoy the misery of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just it's odd like that.
That's a great point that you bring up too. Is like, I was struggling with a little depression at age 17. Things are going on in my family that was kind of hard to deal with, and this music just kind of wrapped me like a warm blanket.
Yeah, it took you away.
Yeah, it's almost like it understood.
Some people, go to, I don't know, religion. Some people go to drugs. You went to Pink Floyd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. People in high school that knew I was majorly into Pink Floyd, they're like, "And you don't do drugs?" Really.
Yeah, I get that one a few times.
A lot of people couldn't understand that concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I went out and bought "Wish You Were Here." Of course, that one came out in '75, just before two Before the Wall.
Love it, absolutely.
What can you say? I can't really pick out like a deep cut because everyone's heard that whole thing.
Yeah, and you got to hear it in its entirety. If you haven't heard it, first of all, you should be embarrassed.
Yes,
but secondly, you have not lived until you heard these albums. I mean, I'm serious. And you got to hear them all. You can't bounce around. You can't listen to this track and this track, and you gotta hear them in their entirety.
Exactly right. Yeah. So not much more to be said about "Wish You Were Here."
Yeah. Welcome to the machine.
At one, while I was getting into them and buying these CDs, my best friend Todd, called back out to him again. He had the cassette to Radio Chaos. Yeah. Roger Waters' solo project, which is fantastic.
His best solo album, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I kind of got into am I a Roger fan or am I a David Gilmour fan? It was kind of like the Twilight thing, which camp are you in? I can't believe I brought that reference up. But you understand.
I do.
So I'm like, okay, well, I want to check out the final cut then. Because I know I knew at that time Roger had more to do with that.
With the final cut, yeah.
And I loved it. That was the next CD I bought.
Yeah.
And it's strange, of course, you've noticed that I haven't bought Dark Side of the Moon yet. But this was my journey.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't explain why I didn't get that one first or second.
Yeah.
But this, as a teenager, this is how I went. Got the final cut. The single from that one was Not Now, John. I think they selected that because it was kind of a more upbeat rockin' song. They thought they could maybe make a hit out of that.
Yeah. And you know, let me interject this. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the final cut, and you know that.
Right.
I do like the David songs on there. But the rest of it, you know, they sound like, and I think you've schooled me on this, some of it sounds like leftover wall stuff to me.
And it actually is.
Yeah. So that's, and it sounds like it to me.
Yeah, it actually is. I mean,
And I've tried. I've went back, I've listened to, and there's certain songs that I do kind of like, but what's the one, The Tigers
Broke Free.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from the movie The Wall. Yeah. When they were recording The Wall, they were really toying with the idea of it being a triple album.
Wow.
Yeah, but they, clearer heads prevailed on that one. And it may not have been the success that it was if it was. I mean, it would have been triple the cost. They probably wouldn't have sold as much.
Right.
But there are highlights on the final cut that I think people should check out. That I think are fantastic moments. The Gunner's Dream is probably my favorite on the album. The song The Final Cut. And Two Suns in the Sunset is also a great song.
I like that one.
Yeah. Now,
I do like that one.
Again, it's a very depressing album, but where I was in my life, it was a warm blanket.
I got you.
So
yeah.
So I checked that out. I listened to it 1,000-2,000 times. And I'm like, well, I loved Radio Chaos. I heard Todd's tape, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that next.
And what do you like better, Radio Chaos or the Final Cut?
I don't know, because part of me says the memory of the Final Cut and what it means to me outweighs the quality of Radio Chaos.
See, I think Radio Chaos was a more defined concept for me.
It was.
The Final Cut, it's hard to find a story in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There really isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much. It's more of an anti-war album.
Yeah.
There's not a storyline, whereas Radio Chaos,
disjointed,
Radio Chaos had a lead character and all that. So
love it.
But Radio Waves was the hit from that. Rock Radio played that a little bit.
Yeah.
You may have heard that, you may not have. But highlights on the album for people to check out. The Powers That Be has guest vocals. Paul Carrick is on there. Of course, he was in Squeeze. He was in Ace. And he does a great job contributing to that album. And then another track that impacted me was 4 Minutes. It's really not a cohesive song, but it's one of those theatrical moments, kind of like what hooked me on The Wall. And it was about someone accidentally pressing the button, and we all have 4 minutes to live.
Yeah, we all perish.
And in the 80s, I mean, that
was a threat. The red
fear,
threat. Yeah.
The fear of nuclear war was very real, and I remember having nightmares about it back then.
Yeah, and someone like Roger, I'm sure he thought about it constantly.
Oh yeah, it was on his mind all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so this solo album's great. What about David? Let's check out David's solo album. I bought About Face. And that one came out in 1984. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Now I'm at the point where, I can't pick one or the other,
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard anything from About Face, that's probably one that people are way less familiar with. Check out Murder, Love on the Air,
Blue
and
Light.
You Know I'm Right. Blue Light, yeah.
I love Blue Light.
Blue Light.
I think it's the most Pink Floyd sounding one on there. It kind of has the run like hell kind of vibe.
Yeah. And since this one came out in 1984, you can definitely hear David's sound on A Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Yeah, it's almost like the precursor to Momentary. It's very much you definitely can tell what each of them brought to the party when you hear them outside of Pink Floyd.
Exactly.
And
right.
I really like, and I don't know if you're going to touch on it or whatever, but I really love the first David Gilmour album.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it was 78 or 79, somewhere around. I think 78.
Yeah.
I think it's a great record. So that's another one worth checking out if you
definitely check it out
in the wild. I think there's some great moments on that record.
If you appreciate more of the rock moments in Pink Floyd than you do the ambient type stuff, check his solo album out.
It's more straight to the point blues, hard rock.
Yeah. All right, so at this point, I have The Wall. I have Wish You Were Here. It's time to buy Dark
Side of the Moon. Coming up.
Yeah. That one released in 1973. So, bit the bullet. I say bit the bullet. And I wish I'd bought it earlier.
Yeah.
Because that's their ultimate, that's their pinnacle. That's when all members of the band were contributing equally and
Getting
along. Yeah. And of course,
focus. Their focus was laser focus.
Exactly, it exactly was. Yeah. So I can't say much more about Dark Side that people probably haven't heard before.
And I think that, and not that this is overlooked by any stretch, but I think Alan Parsons played a huge role in that.
He did.
In that record.
Oh, he did.
And just the use of sound effects and how they incorporated all that together, very inventive for the time. And, Chris made this point in the opener that, there's his opening statement that there's so much information about Pink Floyd and inner workings of all the songs and stuff. But, I guess gun to my head, my favorite, it's hard for me to pick a favorite Pink Floyd album. I'm not the biggest fan as you, but I'm a very huge fan. I love their stuff. I do think Dark Side is their best album. If I had to say which one's the best, that doesn't mean it's the one I listen to the most or the one that I prefer the most. It is the best.
It's best in regard of that was their creative peak for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I will agree with that.
Agree totally.
All right. So listened to that, loved it, and I'm like, okay, I need to complete my modern era and round it out with Animals.
Animals, man.
Yeah.
Now see, that one on the right day is my favorite album.
Yeah, see, now that's how I swing. I'm like, I listen to Animals. I'm like, maybe this is my favorite, and I swing back and forth on that.
It's the one that's squeezed in the middle of all these like ultra successful records, and maybe that plays a role in my mind that. I didn't hear this one crammed down my throat on rock radio nearly as much.
Yeah, that could play a role for sure.
But it just has such a nice, smooth, like from one song to the next, the movements are all, the inner workings of that record are just so beautiful.
Yeah, and really long songs too. And
you don't know it.
You don't even notice.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So I've my Dark Side of the Moon On collection is complete. So it's like, okay, now it's time to start discovering the older stuff.
Yeah, and that's a different bag altogether.
It is indeed.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started with Metal.
Yeah.
Which has One of These Days, another great instrumental.
Oh man, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And what a great production for the time.
It was. Yeah. So people aren't probably familiar with the rest of that album. Echoes was like a masterpiece. 23 minutes long.
Yeah,
it was basically one side of the album.
Yep.
But it's great. But it has its moments where it's like, okay, let's get on with it.
And let me say this too, from a sonic standpoint, even though I thought the arrangements and stuff were brilliant, it wasn't quite to the level that the subsequent records were. Yeah, as far as audio quality go.
All of these earlier albums, you can kind of look at them as they were finding their way to Dark Side of the Moon.
That's right.
So
that's well said. That's exactly right.
But one track on there I really liked that I think people should check out is called Fearless.
Yeah.
I think it's a great song.
I totally agree with that.
Check that one out. I started buying books and materials, reading up on their history, getting like real knowledgeable of Pink Floyd.
Bootleg albums.
Yeah. I didn't really pursue bootleg albums because I did buy one at a place called Stone Mountain on West End. I bought one and boy did it sound bad. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going down this road again. So I was reading about their origins, and I'm like, well, I need to go back and see where they started out. My next CD was The Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
you were in for a surprise with that one.
I was. I didn't know what to expect. Now I kind of knew they had kind of a Beatles sound, kind of a trippy psychedelic space rock kind of thing.
I was gonna say, yeah,
but I didn't know to what degree. But I liked it. I liked it for the most part, just for the historical aspect of it.
And you wanted to like it, let's face it.
I wanted to like it, sure. And it's one that I don't go to very often at all anymore, right. But on occasion I'll listen to the 60s
There's some good stuff on there.
There really is.
And you wonder, had Sid stuck around and continued to work and, within the context of them, and here I have a question, like where do you think that influence came from? Is that just do you think that was more of a Sid thing, or do you think that was more where they just wanted to be? It was more the context of the times? How
that started out, they started out playing, out live in London clubs, and they were doing a lot of blues covers. This is before they really started doing their originals. Yeah. So they were mainly a blues band. But a club in London was doing the special run with them. So this live show was called The Happening at the Marquee Club. And for the last section of their set, they would just kind of experiment. They would do avant-garde stuff.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a collective thing where the band, it kind of happened by accident. Then people came out to see that and went crazy.
Wow.
This was in the underground scene of London, so, you know, anti-pop type of stuff.
Yeah.
So
and this was the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the crowds that would show up to see them went crazy, so that's kind of how they evolved into this avant-garde, trippy, psychedelic type of stuff.
Yeah, and you know the prog rock movement kind of claims Pink Floyd at times.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and the people that like early Genesis, for instance, they seem to like the early Pink Floyd stuff. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that was definitely part of the equation at that point,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's interesting that it wasn't by choice; it was more by default.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So yeah.
So, yeah, I discovered the early 60s, or the early career in the 60s of Pink Floyd, and I was like, okay. Wasn't expecting that. But next thing I bought was Adam Hart Mother. That, of course, has the 23-minute, 44-second suite on it.
I like that album.
Yeah.
I really like that
Again, you can see where they were going towards Dark Side of the Moon on
Yep.
this.
Yep.
One of my favorite songs on there, though, is Summer 68. I think it's a great song.
I agree.
Check that one out.
Yeah.
Next, I bought Obscured by Clouds, which was the one album before Dark Side. And you could really hear it, you know, kind of molding together. What's the Deal is a song that I think, if it weren't for its title, it could have very well been like one of those AM radio type hits.
Yeah.
I mean,
I could totally see
yeah,
that.
it's a fantastic song.
It has all those qualities.
All the
It's
qualities,
a nice
yeah.
song. Really nice song.
It really is. So
Yeah.
it could have been a hit if it weren't for the title.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining about the title. I mean, it's Pink Floyd. They do, they do what they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that might have gotten them success early on.
Interesting point.
And it may have changed their career anyway.
Yeah.
So it's good that was skipped.
Yeah.
Free 4 is another song that I liked on there as
Yeah.
well. So check that one out. Bought Saucerful of Secrets next. Their second, studio album. And that's the one with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun.
I knew you were going to say that. I love that song.
That's
man.
a great song. Very ethereal, like very low-key song.
And if I made a list, that oddly enough, that could be in my top 10 Pink Floyd songs.
Oh, well, I can see that. Absolutely, yeah.
And it's one that if you haven't heard it, it's a must-hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought More, the soundtrack to the film More. That one was a little scattered because they were really making sounds for a movie,
Right,
So
right.
there's not really well structured songs.
I was
going to
say a lot of it sounds very underdeveloped,
Yeah.
but it was just to fit the scenes in the movie. And
But again,
stuff,
this came out in '69. Pink
Yeah.
Floyd was known for that. They were known for the experimental avant-garde stuff. So
and
that's
boy,
what they
do they
brought to
do
the
it
film.
on that record.
A great song from there, though, is "Green Is the Color." That's
Yeah.
an actually good song,
Yeah.
well structured, very very nice. Check that one out.
Yeah.
Then I sprung for Ummagumma. This is a half live album, half studio album. What's interesting about this one is each member of the band contributed one or two songs separately, and they worked on them separately. So that's a good album to go to kind of see
The early development.
where each one of the band members was coming from.
Yeah.
Like what their influence was ultimately on Dark Side of the Moon to come, a few years later.
Agreed.
One track to check out. I recommend you listen to it once and then maybe never go back ever again. You can decide on that. But it's interesting because there's no music in it.
Yeah.
The name of the title is also the longest Pink Floyd title.
I know which one it is.
Yeah. Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a Pict. Now, a Pict is indigenous people of what is now Scotland,
Yeah.
who merged with the Scots, that in case you don't know. But it's basically just... Roger did this all himself. He made the animal sounds, the scratching sounds, and he even did the little speech at the end.
And it's kind of clever in its own weird way.
It's clever. It was very experimental, and this track, came before Dark Side of the Moon, On the Run.
Yeah.
That was Roger playing with a little panel, a computer, just experimenting with it with those sounds.
Yeah.
So he was very into doing that.
Right.
And that was a major contribution to the Dark Side of the Moon. So this is kind of like
a precursor to that.
precursor to that.
Yeah.
So check it out, at least, for the historical aspect of it. So I kind of had the studio album set. I had pretty much everything. I wanted to hear more of their 60s stuff, so I bought Relics, which was like their singles.
Yep.
That's a very Beatles move, to release an album of your previous singles.
Yep.
So, and they did that. Arnold Lane, See Emily Play was their first singles.
And I love both of those songs.
Yeah. Yeah, See Emily
both.
Play went to #1 in England.
And then the video that they show of it's See Emily, right? They have old video. It's like an actual video.
Yeah.
It's like that. That's really really cool. It's in black and white. It's
they did that with Arnold Lane as well.
Arnold Lane as well. Yeah.
Arnold Lane was actually banned from a lot of British stations because of its subject matter. It was about a man who stole women's clothes off of clotheslines, and he would go around wearing them. So in the 60s, that was very, very taboo.
Yeah.
So, but also on Relics was where I discovered Careful with That Axe Eugene. One of my favorite creepy songs ever.
Love it.
I also love the song Paint Box.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beginning of my, CD
Obsession.
purchases. Yeah. And it all led to a moment on May 8th, 1994. I was there, 10th row center, at Vanderbilt Stadium, Pink Floyd live.
And I'll tell you where I was that night. I was live on the radio.
Yeah.
WGFX in Nashville, 104.5. Because guess what? Everybody at the damn radio station was at the Pink Floyd show. So there was no
sorry
one
about
left.
that.
Yeah, there was no one left to work, so it was me. But yeah.
I was mesmerized. I don't think I saw a live concert after that, maybe for 3 years.
You didn't
maybe
need to.
4 years. I didn't need to. I was done. That was it.
I heard a lot of people say that. I heard it was just a brilliant show.
It was. It was so good.
Like I said, I was on the radio spinning BTO records, so I wouldn't know.
So yeah, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, I didn't want to rehash anything you'd heard before. That's just my journey through it, and I hope you appreciate the ride. The Spotify playlist is going to have a lot of these lesser known songs on it. You can go check them out, and
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to that because we all have our favorites, and you when you discover a band, it's like your little band for a while.
Yeah.
And you remember those moments. Like one for me is like when I got into the entire Rush catalog, and I can remember certain solos where Alex would play, and I'd be like, oh my God, I've died and went to heaven.
Yeah.
So I get that, and I still think about those records, and it conjures up all of those feelings again.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying here with not just Pink Floyd, but maybe bands that are important to them in their life's journey.
Any band you're obsessed with, over your almost your entire life.
Yeah. So this was great stuff, man. This was fun. And
thanks for listening, guys. Yeah.
And I love Pink Floyd. I really do. As I've gotten older, I've probably appreciated them way more than I did, and I've loved them for a very long time.
Yeah, but as you should,
for sure, as everyone should, you included. But yeah, so I really think their catalog, it's vast, but it's once the '70s output is just brilliant, and I don't think you can call yourself a rock fan without getting into those albums at least once.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. All right. Cool.
All right.
Thanks for watching this episode of In a Darkened Room. You can find the link to this episode's companion Spotify playlist in the description. Darren and Chris welcome your comments. You can leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. Follow In a Darkened Room on Twitter to receive updates and submit your ideas for what we should discuss in upcoming episodes. Darren and Chris are also on Instagram, so give them a follow there as well. All of these links can be found in the description below. While you're there, be sure to click subscribe and ring the bell.
All right, random topic time, and we're gonna draw from the bowl again, right?
Yep.
And
we
it's
never
my
know
turn.
what we're gonna do here. What's gonna happen? What we're gonna pull out
to draw.
You may pull a rabbit out. You never know.
I hope not. Ow! All right, here we go.
All right. What do we got?
All right. The paper says, a song you liked better after you heard while intoxicated. I like this one.
Okay. You want to take it first? Go ahead.
I'll take it first.
All right.
In fact, it was right after I saw a band called Gretel at the Outer Limit. Darren's band, along with Jeff and Brandy. Shout out to them.
What's up?
So we were all hanging out, and things were winding down. The crowds were leaving, and it was like 5 minutes to close. And the guy running the soundboard is just playing music. Well, he decides the very last song he's just going to crank to 11. and just blast it. And I didn't really like Puddle of Mud all that much, but he played Blurry.
Okay.
And after having I don't know how many beers, and just the loudness, the feeling of the moment, I just sat on a bar stool and just listened and absorbed the song. And I'm like, okay, I like it. Yeah, see, I like this song.
I actually like that song, and I don't want to get off on a tangent talking about that song, but that's one of the better songs of that style.
It really is.
Yeah, and I still enjoy it to this day.
And I didn't hate them, but it was like that moment was like, okay, yeah, this is a great song. It took some beers.
All right, so I'm going to answer this in two ways.
Okay.
One for me, after several drinks of alcoholic and adult beverages, all of a sudden I was a J-Lo fan of of the song "I'm Real" with Ja Rule.
Nice.
I heard that in a club once, and I'm like, "Damn, this sounds good."
Yeah.
So that's one, but I'm going to go on to something that I think is funnier.
Okay.
And you may not remember this. So back in I guess it was in the 90s. Somehow you wound up in my car and you were drunk. And I was playing...
Gee, that never happened.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but
anyway,
but I was playing Gary Moore. And I was playing Gary Moore really loud, and the song "Over the Hills and Far Away" came on, and it's got this real river dance, Scottish kind of dancey thing, Irish.
Yeah.
And I remember you going, "This sounds amazing," and you kept turning it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, it won't turn up anymore. It's as loud as it'll go. I was in my Saturn, but that's always when I think of drunk and enjoying music. That whole scene. Comes back to this.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. For this episode, guys. We'll have another one soon. Take care.
See ya.
So going back to...
We probably should take that out.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
That was so stupid.
we can cut it out.
Oh, shit.